Hello, and welcome to part two of Chicago Human Rhythm Project's interview with author of What the Eye Hears, Brian Seibert. I am Tristan Bruns. I'm a Chicago tap dancer, founding member of the Chicago Human Rhythm Project ensemble band, and current member of the Mad Rhythms Tap Dance Company on the south side of Chicago. But this is not about me today. Let me reintroduce our guest, author Brian Seibert. Brian Seibert is an accomplished journalist who pens regular reviews and features in the New York Times, and also writes about a variety of dance styles in other publications, like Dance Magazine, Three Penny Review, and Slate. Published in 2015, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I get nervous about dates. What the Eye Hears is Mr. Seibert's first book and serves as a comprehensive history of tap dance. What the Eye Hears is the winner of an Anisfield Wolf Book Award, finalist for National Book Critics Circle Award, an Economist Best Book of 2015, a Publishers Weekly Best Book of 2015, finalist for Theater Library Association's George Friedley Award, and the Village Voice Best of 2016. Wow, that is a mouthful. Impressive. But man, we're not here to talk about me or you. We're here to talk about this book, What the Eye Hears. May I?
Sure.
I think everyone should get a look, right? This is the book, right? And it, like I said, comprehensive. You can see in 3 dimensions, right? Thank you very much.
The first draft was twice as long.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Don't get ahead. Don't get ahead. Don't get ahead. You're gonna. Anyways, so I would like to preface the interview with a short story. Tap dancers, we do these school shows, these elementary school shows, and it was at one of these shows that I was asked the greatest philosophical tap dance question I ever heard. Right? You're not supposed to pick on the little kids in the front because they don't have good questions. But one time I was feeling ambitious, and I picked the youngest kid right in the front, and the kid stands up and he goes, "Tap dance. Why?" And that was it.
Yes.
And I looked back at the other dancers, and they're like, and I had to think about it. And, so of course you'd be like, well, because it makes us happy. And that's true, but it's so deep and profound that I'm still asking myself, tap dance, why? So I would ask you a modified version of this question. A tap dance history book, why?
Oh, number one, because which version of the answer do you want? One answer is because there wasn't one. Another answer is I wanted to know. I didn't know, and I thought that there was a lot to know. So I gave myself the quixotic challenge of learning everything I could possibly know, and then trying to turn that into a book. Are you asking me how the book came about? Like you want that question, or do you want to stay in the more philosophical realm?
I want to go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept that question very open.
Yes.
Just to kind of see.
Right. Try it out. The actual genesis of the book was I was in grad school at Columbia University, getting a master's degree in writing. And I had been sort of looking for a subject. I had been in teaching in Hong Kong for a couple of years, so I was doing a lot of traveling. So a lot of my writing at that point was about my travels, like an essay on India, whatever. And I remember I had written an essay about the tourism industry around the Cambodian genocide in Cambodia. And I was talking with a professor about that essay. We were having like a little conference like this, and she's kind of nodding off a little bit, and then it was near the ending of it, and I said, well, I have to go soon because I'm going to my tap dance class, because I was still taking tap dance. I'd gotten back into it. I'd kind of put my shoes away for a little bit, but I'd gotten back into it recently, and she perked up, and she said, "Oh, you're a tap dancer, Brian. Why don't you write about that?" And which I had never thought about before. I never thought about that as a subject, something to write about. And I had been recently starting to go to a weekly jam session called was that a place called Swing 46,
Yep.
Which I talk about at the very beginning of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene seemed to me like something I could write about.
Yeah.
And then I went to like go find a book to help me write this little essay I was going to write about this experience, and there wasn't really a book. I mean, there was one from 1968, but there hadn't been one in a long time. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll write the book, and it only took me like 12 to 15 years.
Okay, I was in the impression 10.
Yeah.
I don't know where I got that from. Something I read was like, it took him 10 years. But no, it's a
little bit longer than that.
A lot longer than that. All right, well, right on. I mean, you could go forever and ever. Sure.
Yeah, you have to stop at some point, and eventually I did. But
so yeah, I do like that answer to the question. But then going back to your first answer, so now I'm curious about the other answer you kind of alluded to. So you say there hasn't been a real tap dance history book published yet.
There had not when I started in 2000.
When you started, okay. Because I was going to ask you, like, how much did you have to do with the marketing for the book?
Oh, almost not at all. That's like somebody else.
Because one review, I don't know if you're familiar with the review by Deborah Cash, and I think it's called The Arts Fuse, where her first 2 pages is her criticizing critiquing the like promotional postcard that she got in the mail or something, or maybe the back of the book where it's like, finally a comprehensive tap dance history book, and she disagreed with it for, again, 2 pages about a postcard. So I was just wondering, because I've seen a couple people like raise eyebrows, being like, well, what is jazz dance then, or what is the Book of Tap, or what is what the eye hears? So I've always kind of been curious how you would respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the marketing copy. That's not really my business. But I would say that there was not a book that was the kind of book that I was imagining, which is something close to what I came up with.
Okay.
Comprehensive in the same way, and also, I was in school for literary nonfiction, so I wanted to write something that was a good book too.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I was telling you before, I've been through it twice. So everyone who hasn't finished it, I've been through it twice. So get moving. Right. Really valuable resource. At 540 pages, it is comprehensive. I mean, but you said it could have been longer. I mean, did you plan for it to be a long book?
It was going to be a big book. I wanted to do justice to the subject, and it's right. It's a whole art form, hundreds of years of history. It could have easily been many volumes, and as I said, the first draft was almost twice as long.
Incredible. Yeah, when you get to the end, you get to like modern day.
Yeah.
And you're right. Oh, I could have written about more people, and I was sitting there like, oh, where is it? Where is it? Are you saving something for a future book?
For a sequel? I haven't thought about that.
Okay.
But I still write, so I keep up on the scene and things that are happening since 2013 or so is probably the last thing that got into this, because book publishing is extraordinarily slow, and you turn in a draft and it's like 2 years later it comes out.
I really don't know. I'm not that good of a writer yet, you see. But I'm going to take your word for it.
Publishing is very slow, as opposed to my newspaper journalism, which is I see something and then the next morning I write it and then it's up for the world immediately.
I think I know what you mean. I was one of these extras in the movie My Best Friend's Wedding, and I told all my friends in middle school that I'm in the movie.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, where is it?
Did you?
And I was like, it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah.
And then middle school passed. Now I'm in high school. Got a whole different circle of friends, and I'm like, oh, here's the movie I'm in. And they're like, that doesn't look like, because it was like from 4 years ago. And that's when I realized that these things take a lot longer. Yeah. You see a movie come out, that movie could have been from who knows how long ago.
Right.
Let me see here. You cover a number of origin stories for tap dance in the book from a lot of different sources.
Yes.
I mean, we have dance trading on the transatlantic slave ships. We've got people on the island of Montserrat, living together. We've got, I mean, on the waterway. I mean, you name it. There's so many different histories.
Yeah.
Are any of them plausible? Some of these have been thoroughly debunked, I think, like the dancing on the ships. I mean, just from what I've personally read, trying to find any, I've read it's more like a euphemism for the exercise. It's not really this like joyous dance part. I'm actually quoting a text I found. It was not really a joyous time for all. And that is a quote from a book I won't mention, but I'm reading that being written, and that never really made sense to me. And then when I'm reading what the eye hears, I feel you agree with me, at least about that particular origin. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out which part of the question to answer. But if you want to talk about that specifically...
Actually, I would like to talk about that specifically, because I'm just real interested in that, because I read in some books that, like, they had these dance parties on the deck. And then you read in other books that say, no, that's not how it goes. So,
well, that's history, number one,
yes.
right? Is that you're going to have differing interpretations of scant evidence from a long time ago. And then all of this, and this is a good test case for a lot of things in tap dancing, it's around slavery. Yeah. So there's a lot of pro and con, and what the meaning of it is contested. So something like there was dancing on the slave ships. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. You can have that's pretty well established in from various sources that did happen. Mm-hmm. What that meant, well, that's going to be a matter of interpretation. That different people are going to spin in different ways. And what I try to do in the book, and maybe this is what you're getting on, is to give you all the different angles.
Yeah. No, I really appreciated that whole origin section, because I don't feel like you, and correct me if I'm wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't feel like you planted your flag in any of them, necessarily. Like, you really did just report them, and then kind of give some context, and then maybe a little of your own 2 cents, but you didn't plant a flag in any of them.
I don't think you can. I don't think there's enough. If there was enough evidence in any one thing that I thought this is the story, the simple story, I would have done that.
Yeah.
Because that's like better. Right? That's more satisfying, right? People want the simple story.
I know.
But where I didn't see that, then I try to give you as much of the complexity as possible. If what you have is a bunch of shards left over, that's not the whole puzzle, because that's what we have. Because this is a ephemeral art form that was not of the highborn, and was not like this, was not like the royal history or great men that people take records of. This is all over the place. You have to find the little fragments that are left. You don't have all the puzzle. So what I try to do is make sense of the fragments without pretending that the whole puzzle is there.
Yeah, and again, that's what I found refreshing about what the eye hears, because I've heard a lot of people give,
the one story.
Yeah. I mean, I believe there's one article that is, I believe, a response to what the eye hears, but they allude to someone, like, they say kind of like, some authors might write it this way, so it's kind of a little passive-aggressive.
Yeah.
But Constance Vallis Hill writes a response, and she doubles down and says, no, tap dance started on the island of Montserrat, and I forget if it was, these Caribbean islands, that's where it started, end of the story. Is it irresponsible to try to, like, pin it down someplace? Like, is there a moral thing?
I don't know if it's a moral thing. I mean, that's not my idea of the evidence as I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
As I said before, if I saw that the evidence was so strong in one thing, then I would have said so.
I want to say the majority of the time when discussing the origin of tap dance, right? And it's just something. I mean, I try to read every single book, which isn't so hard because there's not so many. So when you say that, it's like I'm trying to read every book, the 12 books,
It's not like every book on Lincoln. There's more every year, right?
Oh my God, and they get longer and longer. What else do we need to know about Lincoln? But when I read about the origin stories for tap dance, usually it goes like Irish, English, African.
Yeah.
Like in every book. And this is just like cumulative data. Just when
Yeah.
I go through these books, I counted just the order, right?
Yeah.
And some books put more weight in one or two groups than
Yeah.
another. Some claim that it's completely equal, but rarely, I maybe can count like 2 times in a book that I would kind of put in the ballpark as yours, or at least that has like a history.
Yeah.
Africa is never first, just
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I get to your book, Africa is first, and I just wondered, just because I've
Yeah.
rarely see that, was
Yeah.
that a conscious
Oh,
decision?
absolutely, totally, yes. Africa's first.
All right, well there you go.
Africa's first. I mean, we can riff off that for the rest of the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Africa's not the only thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You have there is an English
Mhm.
and Irish contribution. It doesn't happen in Africa either, right? There's no tap dancing in Africa without the slave trade, and tap dance is something that happened in a particular conditions of North America and what became the United States of America. It didn't happen in other parts of the African diaspora, Cuba, Brazil. It didn't happen in Ireland. It didn't happen in England. It didn't happen in any part of Western or Central Africa. It happened here because of the mixing of cultures here and because of the particular conditions of the cultures here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all true. But is it an equal thing? That's also not true.
And you, I have one in here, like, where is it? Oh yeah. Pardon me. I was gonna try to print this out on paper, and I'm bad with the thing, but my printer is not working. I'm sure you can understand. Everyone can appreciate a printer not working. Did you have any idea just how pervasive Blackface minstrelsy was? Not just the tap dance, but the history of the United States, history of theater, the history of global theater to a degree. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing. I'm beside myself learning about it, right? Not just from what the eye hears, but just from trying to read on the origins of tap.
Yeah.
I mean, my mind is blown, and so I have to imagine you've seen a million more times than what I've seen.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got lost in that particular section of the history for years.
It's easy, right?
Years, because there's a whole like cottage industry of almost of books about that.
Yeah,
it's been very popular in the last like 20 years. So there was always more books coming out about that, and it's such a fascinating and strange stuff that I got totally. I could have written many more books about just that part because it's so weird. I didn't know. The answer is yes. I didn't know. Like most things, like so many things, I knew nothing when I started, really.
And what was it like researching this stuff? Like, did it kind of get to you after a while? Because sometimes it weighs me down.
Oh, absolutely.
You know.
And that was a burden of the book, but also another answer to your first question. Like, why tap history? Because I knew it would also be a history of America.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of dark stuff, too.
How does learning about tap dance history reshape your idea of U.S. America?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I also read, many, many books about slavery, 20, 30, 40 books about slavery, and learned all about Reconstruction and segregation and many things I didn't learn so much about in high school or growing up as a white kid in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, well, white kids in the suburbs of Chicago suffer from the exact same affliction. Let me tell you, and that actually, I'm getting this from. Do you know what part of the book I'm getting this from?
No, I don't know
so,
right now. Yeah.
So this is my favorite part. And I'm geeking out on you about this whole subject because I completely relate this part, and I think this is like the linchpin to reading the book. And this is my theory. So this is a theory here. What is it? Third to last page. I think fifth to last paragraph. I wish I wrote it down, but where pretty much you're saying the same questions I'm asking you here. You're saying, like, I didn't know about a lot of this stuff when I started researching the book.
Yes.
And I believe the word you used was now you're chastened by it, which I found an appropriate word to use.
Sure.
Right? And then you end that paragraph not by reevaluating tap dance, but you use the word country. Like, it makes me kind of see my country in a new way.
Sure.
And I'm reading that, and holy cow, man! Like, it almost, like, I didn't cry or nothing, but like I felt like the pressure in the chest. Like, I could tell my capillaries are, kind of pushing out, because I feel exactly the same way. And to tell you the truth, I almost would have appreciated that. For me personally, I would have appreciated that in the beginning of the book. So what was your decision to put that, or to even admit that to everyone? Like,
to get the response that you just said.
Well, there you go. I answer my own question, and that's how good a reviewer I am. I answer my own questions. But then a lot of the criticism of the book is due to the tone of the book. And I agree with you. There has not been a tap dance book, history or otherwise, written like this. And what really stood out to me, I mean, there's a lot of things that make it unique. What really stood out to me is that you use a critical lens when you're going all through this stuff. Right. And I've heard a lot of the critics critique you for being too critical of people, even though I remind people that you are a critic. Yes. So maybe what did you expect? I don't know. A critic's critique.
Yes.
But what made you decide to? Was that just natural? Was that just how it had to be? Is that you?
Yes. All of those things. It's me. It's also my idea of good writing.
Mm.
It's also my idea of honesty. It's like my responsibility to the reader. I did all the work to learn about this stuff and check it out and see all the things that you haven't seen and read all the things that you haven't read. And then my job is to tell you what I think about it.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the conclusion I came to. Again, I'm like, he's a critic, so that kind of makes sense. And especially if people are familiar with your work in like the Times. I mean, I'm of the opinion you do not mince words, and you say just how you feel. So if you're familiar with your other work, I don't see how you could be surprised at the tone of this book, because it sounds like you, essentially. And then even, okay, so the deep dive of history that you did, I'm not sure if people didn't write about some of this other stuff because they didn't know about it or because they choose not to write about it. But, well, like when it comes to like the issues of like Lawrence Baby Jackson, right, and Earl Snake Hips Tucker, and man, who else? Earl Groundhog Basie, even Paul Draper to an extent. Like they have some turbulent histories.
Yeah,
and I feel like
interesting.
Oh, that was super interesting, but it was tough for me to read because, and as you lament in the book, I think like a couple times that it's like if only there was some video, some more stuff of these guys. It would be.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's so sad that there's so little that we're scrounging for Baby Lawrence clips. There's no ground. I mean, is there a Groundhog video? There's no Groundhog.
That I know of.
One of the greats.
Yeah.
We'll never know. And then to learn why there may not be these videos, right? I mean, just drug abuse,
prison terms,
possible murder. I mean, holy cow! I mean, so that was tough to read about this because we've mythologized these dancers to a degree. I mean, what was your decision to include that? Is it just you need to get the history out there? Was there any concern with, upsetting people? I know that's a terrible thing to ask an artist.
Yeah, no.
But I'm just trying to think, like, did you discover this? Were you the first person to discover this?
Some of the things, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot in the book that nobody ever bothered to define before.
Mm.
And then that was like one of the great excitements and joys of doing the research. It's like you read some stuff about Groundhog. I found 2 more articles about him, but that went from this to this, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start to flesh out the picture a little bit and see who this person was. That was always amazing to me when I could find that. And the way I don't know if you want to talk about the process of research.
Yeah, we can.
Stuff.
Absolutely.
Just when you were asking that question, I was thinking about how some of the things changed over time as I was writing the book. So basically, my idea was to learn as much as I possibly could. So that's like interview everyone who's alive, read every book that's possibly tangential to the subject in some way, and then try to find anything I can. And what made that easier was the digitization of books and especially newspapers, especially for tap dancing, the black run newspapers. So that was a huge source that I think hadn't really been mined before, but that became digitized as I was working on the project. So I was able to do like a keyword search on his name and find the one article that had been written about him in 1945 or whatever, and that's true for so many other figures in the book. Where in the Marshall Stearns book, for example, there had been one interview, and I found the interview because I went back to the original Marshall Stearns papers and found the transcript of the interview. So I had that, and that had maybe a little bit more than made up in the book. But then to find this other thing and maybe a photo or something, it's when there's so little to find a little bit more feels like an amazing find.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Anytime I'm reading some other book, and like if I'm reading a jazz book, and then all of a sudden like Billy Joe Jones said that, like, oh, that's like a Baby Lawrence thing, and you're like, holy cow. Yeah. You flip out and you take a picture, you show everyone. Did you see this one page of this book? Amiri Baraka mentioned,
I was doing that for 10, 15 years. Yeah. Anytime I found the one thing that they got in my file, I had a big, huge file cabinet with little Baby Lawrence file, and it got a little bit thicker all the time. And then you figure out what goes in the book and how to take all that information and make it into a coherent story that goes from page 1 to page 500, and you learn along the way what you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it stinks that we gotta like search for historical stuff, like it's dug so you gotta dig so deep.
Yes.
On the other hand, when you find it,
it's fun. Yeah.
Very treasure.
Yeah.
So in covering the early 20th century, you discuss a lot of the prolific producers of the time, right? Lou Leslie, Florence Ziegfeld, and in particular, Ned Weber.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, because after reading, I read an essay by you, perhaps my favorite essay, or article, sorry. It's I feel like it's an essay. It's good. It's like an essay. But in the 2018 New York Times article titled "Ridiculous, Fabulous, on Broadway," tapping in quotation marks. And you kind of let some pretty popular Broadway choreographers have it as far as their tap dance numbers in the shows, right? And their kind of copy-paste way of choreographing.
Yeah.
And I found the clips and I was just like, okay, yeah, that's step. Okay, there you go. Sequin tuxedos, check, got it. And so when I got to the part in Wayburn, because that kind of, I've read The Art of Stage Dancing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I mean, not unfortunately. It's fine advertisement.
Yeah. This is like a manual that Ned Weber put out in the mid-20s, which was
25,
which was kind of an advertisement for his school in New York. Yeah.
And for people who don't know, so Ned Weber wrote this book, The Art of Stage Dancing, had this famous dancing school. A lot of people went through there. Fred and Adele Astaire.
A little bit.
Eddie Rector.
Not really.
I'm trying to remember because there's pictures in the book. So that's how I figure those people went through. Ann Pennington.
Yeah.
Right?
Marilyn Miller who was one of the biggest stars of the 20s, was one of his proteges. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Those are the clips I went to try to find after that. I looked up Pennington and Miller. And then he even writes in the book, like, the whole point is, like, commercialization, reproduction, kind of cookie cutter stuff, mechanization.
Yes.
And so when I got to the part on Weyburn, after reading your one article, because I kind of equated the two, I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna let him have it. He's gonna and you kind of treat him a little more benignly than I was anticipating. So I mean, maybe this is just a question for me, but why take it easy on Weyburn?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that being a. I don't know if I was taking it easy.
Well, like you mentioned, how like the inventor of ragtime, but it didn't come off like as sarcastic as I would have hoped it would have. I mean, I don't know, man. I got a thing for Weyburn.
Yeah,
Weyburn. Man, I don't know what it is. I was looking for that book for like years and years, and now finally someone put it on like a PDF online.
I see.
Or like archive.org.
Yeah.
Put it up there, and just going through it, and I was just like, oh yeah, we're gonna get Weyburn, but yeah, I guess you do get it to him pretty good. That's I was expecting more. Weyburn, look him up. That's deep stuff.
But maybe what you're getting at is that like that's the beginning of a standardization of tap dance.
Exactly.
Certainly on Broadway and the mass production of a certain kind of style and teaching it to masses of people. He's definitely part of that movement in the beginning of the 20th century.
Oh yeah.
And maybe where the name comes from. He might have been the first person to use the word tap.
That's right. I read that in Noel's Taproots. He puts it at 1903. Ned Weber says
Yeah,
like,
I never found the actual thing.
Mm.
The closest I could find was there's a 1941 article that uses that, and so that makes that assertion that it happened then for that one of his groups, the Minstrel Misses.
Yeah.
So I leave it as he might have said it then, but I wasn't able to actually find, a text from that time in which he actually used the term then.
Wouldn't that be just the you define the first time tap is used in print?
What I was able to find is that you see it come into popularity in the 20s. So if you watch like reviews of shows through the 20s, it starts to change from buck and wing to clogging, and to by the end of the 20s they're calling it all tap dancing.
Yeah.
Just in time for the movies to make tap dancing a big thing.
Oh yeah. Oh, perfect segue. Speaking of the movies. Oh man, this is probably the well, maybe not the most exciting part, but this part really got me going. Astaire versus Kelly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you really put them side by side. I mean, this has been just water cooler talk, right? Every time when you get with someone, like who's better, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, and you start going to but Fred Astaire's like uptight. Yeah, but Gene Kelly does Maxie Ford's 20 per number. So I don't know, and who knows if we're really hearing both of them. Astaire did most of his dubbing.
Did his own dubbing.
Did his own dubbing.
Yeah.
And Gene Kelly did not always.
Right.
Okay. But yeah, just Astaire versus Kelly. What made you decide to really put them, not just because I've seen people compare them.
Yeah, I mean, they always get compared.
Right, always. It's inevitable. But you really do a side-by-side strengths and weaknesses kind of comparison. And if we're to believe some of other people who've read the book, Kelly comes out the loser.
By far. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Yes.
And in a book about tap dancing. It was a book about something else. It was a book about the expansion of the movie musical in the 50s, or charismatic masculinity in Irish American culture. Something else Kelly would be. He's an important guy, right? That's I guess what I'm saying. In a book about tap dancing, there's not really a contest between Astaire and Kelly for me.
Right on. No, I'm with you. And they both borrow heavily. Well, I don't want to say, well, Astaire, you're right, borrows heavily from black dancers.
Yes.
Right? Those trips down to Harlem,
Yep.
to Cotton Club, I assume he's going to, and other places.
Right.
Now, where's the... And
another way of saying he's a jazz dancer.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that Kelly isn't. Like, later in his career, Astaire made this album with Oscar Peterson.
Yes.
And
yes. I've listened to him many times. It's good.
Gene Kelly could never have done that. right? You didn't have like all of those songs were made for Astaire. First of all, like the entire catalog of the American Songbook, but the idea of like jamming with a real group of jazz musicians is not really in Gene Kelly's wheelhouse, you know.
And that made, when you wrote about that album, it made me stop reading the book right then and there. And I went to Spotify, and it's there. I forget the name, shame on me. But yeah, look up Fred Astaire, and the album we're talking about is there. Oscar Peterson, Flip Henderson on drums.
I can't remember the whole lineup.
If I had my book to show you, you would see then all the names of all the people underneath, in case I ever had to reference it in front of anyone important. Let me see. I forgot my book. I'm sorry. But then, Astaire borrows a lot from black dancers and kind of creates this aesthetic that now a lot of people just think is tap dance.
Right.
Essentially.
Right. That's what I would have thought of when I was a kid. You know, what is tap dance?
Everybody.
Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire. That's what I knew.
And now it's kind of broken up into like these, like, well, you know, so I'm listening to a interview for like a French tap festival, right? And author Constance Vallis-Hill is on there, and she's given kind of the rundown on tap, and she says that there is the white Broadway stream, and then there's the black rhythm stream,
right?
And I wasn't sure about breaking it up into like a white and a black category.
I think that's a simplification.
I agree. And I like that you didn't go that route in the book. I really don't think that I don't get any sense of that at all.
No, I mean it's just more complicated than that.
Yes,
it's all mixed up. Which is not to say that as I said before that it's like an equal thing. It's not. It's a black art. If I'm gonna tell you like the make a list of like the 20 most influential tap dancers, that list is going to be 85% black, right? So it's not a very. There's two things and they're equal, but it's also not this other thing where there's like white tap and black tap. I think doesn't do justice to the complexity of the interchange.
And I try to find the tap histories. People write histories of tap dance in places you would not expect to find them. I just did a deep dive on like tap dance syllabi from like the 30s to present.
Yeah.
And it's very depressing when you read these histories. Usually the African contribution, it'll be, Irish jig and reel, English clog, and African steps.
Yes, right.
And I see that, and I even compared, like comparing, copy paste Broadway moves. I had my books out, and I'm doing like, okay, and like, it's always African steps.
Yes.
That seems, like you said, very too simple.
Yeah. Also wrong.
Yeah. So can you help us understand what is it? It's more than African steps. What is?
I mean, the most important influence is probably the idea of dance and rhythm and music being the same thing, and the rhythmic approach. That's the thing that's more that was carried over from across the Middle Passage in the slave trade. So it's not slaves aren't bringing over instruments. They're bringing over an approach to music, a way to music, and that's the continuity more than anything else. And that's really at the root, right? And everything else feeds into that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes I like to go the ethno-musicologist route and find those. And
it's not just tap dancing, right? Like, so that's another way in this when the book is about the history of American culture, is that's also jazz, ragtime, rock and roll, hip hop, whatever's happening on TikTok now, right?
I try to stay away. It intimidates me.
Yes.
To be honest.
Right. That's American. That's like how Americans dance.
Okay.
Right. Comes from that African root.
Yeah. Right. No. Yeah. And I think that your book outlines that pretty well, and sticks so close to tap. One thing, a lot of people get surprised, they get jazz dance, right? The Stearns jazz dance, and they're like, well, there's not a lot of tap dance in here. I'm like, well, it kind of is, because that turns into tap dance.
Right.
But like
the way he does it is he started as a jazz guy, right? His first book was about the history of jazz.
Oh yeah.
He started before that as a Chaucer scholar. But,
right. Yes, that was interesting to learn about.
Yeah. So he's approaching it from jazz dance, and tap for him is like the highest form of jazz dance. Mostly because he was hanging out with Honey Coles and Charlie Atkins, and they were his main source. So they just kind of skewed the idea of what the categories were a little bit towards them. So that book is thinks of tap as like a subset of jazz, which is a way of thinking about it. I mean, when I'm writing a history of tap dancing, as I said, like the word doesn't come to the 20s, but I start a lot before that. I think of it's really like American dance.
Yeah. Sure. Speaking of jazz dance, man, I don't mean to get like too real for everybody, but I forgot about the epilogue at the end, or maybe I blocked it out. And so when you get to jazz dance, this was one of the things that also I think I've seen in your book that I've not seen anywhere else, is a critical view of jazz dance, right? It's like the backstager version of a show.
Yeah.
But I've never seen anybody, and you reference again Gene Kelly and Stearns' own words.
Yeah.
And they're not. They don't have a very progressive tone.
Well, it was written in 1960, so.
Yeah. But
they have certain attitudes that we don't have anymore.
No.
Or I don't have.
But when you have, Stearns saying some stuff, and you're like, and those italics are his.
Yes.
Like, it seems like you're making a very clear point. I mean, does that? I don't know what question I'm even asking you. I'm kind of just like this is more like therapy for me, to be honest. So I don't know. I'll give you $300 an hour as long as we talk about this. But you must come across studying tap dance research and just black dance, black music, Black American research. You must come across language like that just all of the time. We were talking about just looking up Blackface stuff, and that's bad enough.
Yes.
But even just like the programs and the flyers that you report on. I mean, the language of them, and you don't parse your words. You don't allude to
I give you
language.
I give you the actual words, right?
Yeah. And I mean, people have been critical of that. Even though that's been my experience in most scholarly articles, they just report what it is.
Yes. Of all the criticisms you've brought up so far, that to me is the one that has the most merit. I still disagree with it, but I understand how someone might object to that.
Okay.
Like, I can understand a point of view, like, I just don't want to see that language.
Yeah.
Right? That language is traumatic to me. I don't want to see it. I understand that point of view. I ultimately disagree with it because I think we need to look at the thing. We need to look at the darkness. And I want that in the book. I want that in it. Without that, you don't really understand the history. So that would be my response to that criticism, but I understand it.
Right on. Well, that's great, because I've been curious about that. You write at great length about Savion Glover.
Sure.
I mean, there's a good chunk.
Yeah. He was the dominant figure for 20, 30 years. Yeah.
Total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And I read Thomas Kuhn's book, so I know what a paradigm shift is. I'm not just a yuppie using paradigm to sound cool. Yes. I mean, but an actual, just like, and if you've read the Thomas Kuhn's The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, then there must always be a crisis before the change in paradigm. Sorry, it was my first philosophy, but I don't know why I picked that one. But now I got to put paradigm shift in everything. But this is a real one. This is true. So you write a lot about Savion. You write a lot about bringing the noise, bringing the funk.
Sure.
You talk
also
about,
because that's a work that is history. So.
Oh yes.
So it becomes part of talking about how tap history is talked about. And becomes part of the culture.
Would you agree that, so I mean, for people not aware of the cultural context of what's going on in late 80s, 90s. And again, if I mess up anything,
Sure, yeah.
tell me, please. But this is like the modern Afrocentric movement, right? When you have books coming out by Chike Diop, is like the African origin of civilization. You got Martin Bernal's Black Athena, which, some people consider them just like armchair anthropology or like kind of like revisionist history.
Yeah.
But other people, it's eye opening.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value there, though I also am open to, the critiques of the works. But that's going on at the time, and I noticed you didn't really get into that, like in the book, like what's kind of going on in.
Not in this draft.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No room for just anthropological, analysis. But knowing that, it doesn't then surprise me that this show would come out that way, just because that kind of rocked the world at that time. You're kind of critical of the very bitter the bitter portrayals of kind of the last
of the earlier
the portrayals of like Bill Robinson as Uncle Huckabuck and the Nicholas brothers. I mean, did you like Noise Funk?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing show. I saw it. I remember that before I even got back into thinking about tap dancing, I saw it in '97 or whenever it was on Broadway, and I was blown away with it. And I had none of these criticisms then because I didn't know anything. I just thought it was an amazing show with amazing choreography, which I still think. I mean, I wrote. I write a lot in depth about how amazing the choreography for that show is. Even though I have a lot of problems with the history, and part of how the book is structured is that at that point in the book, you're not just taking my word for it. You know the history because I've given you, hundreds of pages of the history at that point, so you can see this is how they're telling the history, and you can say, well, wait a second, that's not what I remember from these other documents I've been looking at, for hundreds of pages. So that's part of what I want to do in the book is educate the reader, empower you to not even just take my word for it. And I have my opinions, but you can have your own opinions about it too.
Sure. I've read so many tap dance histories, short and small, that diminish the African influence. I have some that take it out completely.
Yeah.
I got one book that's just like, it's just English clog dancing.
Sure.
That's really all it is.
Yes.
It's just faster.
Yes.
It's faster English clog dancing. I almost lost my mind. But is this? I mean, what do you think was the impetus for excluding the European white influence in noise funk? Because it's absent.
Right.
It's just completely missing.
It's some of that is dramatic, concision. They want to tell a specific story. I don't actually necessarily have a problem with that. It's just not tap history. It's more complex than that. And maybe to follow up here on your question,
yes, please.
It seems like it's a corrective too, and that I also understand. Like if all of this other bullshit, racist history for 200 years is leaving out the African influence, we can have a show that leaves out the white influence. That's actually, we can have a lot of that probably and it won't even come close to balancing out the opposite.
Absolutely. I love this answer. That is great. Did you write the book in chronological order?
I would say no.
Okay.
There were different parts that were written in different orders and changed a lot. I mean, it was many years of revision too, so it's hard even to remember what came in what order. Except the very beginning was the first thing I wrote. A version of that. It also changed many times over the years, but a version of the beginning was, I think, the first. That going back to that origin story of the book, like right about tap, Ryan. It was something like some sentences of the original thing. The first thing I wrote are in that beginning.
Okay. So I have a that's why I'm asking. I was of the opinion maybe you did write it in order. Because again, going back to that fifth to the last paragraph, third to last page statement, it seemed to me that you get more critical as you progress through the book, and that's just my subjective.
No, that's definitely true, and that's because I have more to be critical about.
Yeah,
because it's closer to me.
Yes,
it's things I've actually seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's where I'll have more evidence. So if I have more evidence to have a standing on, then I feel more comfortable to have an opinion.
Right.
But I think you're not wrong about that. There's probably my critical role grows stronger as we get closer to the present.
Yeah, because from that one paragraph I'm talking about, I came up with the story in my own head that you're researching this stuff and kind of getting surlier and surlier as you have to delve into this some ugly stuff, and then you're just like, oh, I'll show you, and kind of taking it out on the page. But I'm glad it's not that way, because that would be a depressing way to write a book. But yeah, man, I mean, the later it goes, the harder you go in. And I do appreciate that, because it really paints the picture for me, who was not there, was not alive for a lot of that stuff. So to really get the good and the bad, it really helps me paint that picture. But then you've been criticized for being too harsh to people. I mean, can a critic be? Well, I suppose a critic could be too harsh.
I think you can be gratuitously cruel, which is something I try not to be. There are critics I know who do that, just like having fun.
Yeah.
Making jokes at people's expense or just being mean.
Yeah.
I hope that I never do that.
I mean, well, you've been accused by certain people, not all.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the reviews I think are pretty positive.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm going to find the ones that don't just kind of say the nice things. You want to find the stuff. I mean, would you like to respond to that criticism from you? Like, what would you say to someone that says, well, you treat women poorly in this section? How dare you say this?
Well, and this is actually something we were talking about before this came on, which is like, which section?
Oh,
what quote? What's the context? What else did I say about that person earlier in the book?
Yeah.
What's the whole picture? That's if you want to talk about that, we can talk about the whole thing. If you're going to just pull out one quote out of context, that doesn't seem fair.
Right. And that's the evidence to me that a lot of people haven't read the whole book, because like I was telling you pre-interview, like I'll find a part, someone will say, oh well, Seibert said this and this, and I'll be like, I don't remember that exactly like that, and I'll go and I'll find the part and I'll screenshot it, send it over to them, and be like, well, see, and they're like, well, it's still kind of mean though, it's not exactly what I thought, because they hadn't even read the thing. They heard it from someone who heard it from someone who read a review, who then told, and then they're telling me like, oh well, he said this and this, right? But yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of the critique. So I agree with you. I think that really you have to read the whole book. So when you read any of these critiques, go read the whole book. Context is everything in this case. That was one of my kind of big disappointments of reading criticisms of what the eye hears and then trying to talk to people about it. Because there's a lot of, well, I heard about it, but not
I'm glad
I read.
People are talking. I mean, I prefer that they read it. And I prefer they read the whole thing. But it's nice that they're talking about it, too. I'm pleased by that, too. Even if they're getting it wrong.
So they prefer that they read it.
Me too.
Especially that last part that I keep going on about just because it's my favorite part. I feel like if people had gotten to there, that's like the blue M&M for me in the bowl. Because it's just like I'm talking to people. It's like, well, what did you think about that last 2 pages? You didn't follow the whole list, did you? Right, so a little disappointed. A little disappointed in my non-reading friends.
And I think what you're talking about is also tap dancers, right? These are tap dancers.
Yes, absolutely. Tap dancers who are like friends with some of the people in the book.
Exactly. If they're gonna get, they're gonna be sensitive about that. That's human.
Mm-hmm. And yet, every review, unanimous, right? Like it, dislike it, everyone loves that Swing 46 description at the beginning where you're at Buster Brown's.
Yeah.
Was it actually called like the Crazy Tap Jam?
Yeah, they called it the Crazy Tap Jam.
Because I saw it and I was like, wait, is that the title? It must be. Incredible. And again, even people that have a lot to be critical of the book, everyone has to admit, when you're in description mode, it's lush, it's I mean, it jumps out at you. It's 3-dimensional. Like everybody, what's your background in? Because I read so much of your reviews online, but I haven't read any. Do you have any aspirations to write fiction? You said you had a fiction degree.
No, it's nonfiction.
Nonfiction.
But it was creative nonfiction. So it was with the fiction
Okay.
people and the poets, and it has literary aspirations. It's supposed to be good writing. And it's a writing project. It's a history, and I wanted to get it right.
Sure.
But I also was trying to write as well as I could possibly write, and give pleasure to the reader. That's the goal. Give pleasure to myself first, and that should give pleasure to the reader.
Sure. Any plans to go into it? Are you strictly nonfiction? You would not
Pretty
go?
much. I'm not so great at invention. Right. I like learning about something that's in the world or seeing something, and that gets my creative juices going to try to be creative about that. The reason I went to Columbia, in fact, was I was in Hong Kong, and in college I thought I might be an actor because I had been an actor when I was a kid, and then I thought I might be an English professor because I was an English major and was really a reader, and maybe I would be a writer. And then I read some books when I was in Hong Kong that made me think about how you could do nonfiction with a lot of the techniques of fiction and kind of the music of ideas of fiction. And that's why I went to Columbia, to try to figure out how to do that. And I didn't have a subject. I just had like an aspiration of like the kind of way I wanted to write. And then this happened to be the subject that I found to express all of that, to try to write about history, to have description of art, to try to think about art, to try to get sound and vision into words somehow on a page. That was a great writing challenge to me too, and that and seemed like something that hadn't been done all that much before too. So that was part of the ambition.
Right on. Well, if you ever decide to try to create, I'm there for it.
Okay.
I'm there for it, because if you paint a picture like you paint a picture here, I mean, I don't see how it could lose, to be honest. So at the very end, you leave everyone kind of hanging on a cliffhanger, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, when you get to like Dormisha.
Well, sure. This was all stuff like the very end of the book is things that were like happening as the editing process is going on. Like how present do I allow the book to get before I have to say done? Print it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I interrupted you, but
no, that's all right.
What was the question you were getting to? Like what's happened since, or?
I'm kind of interested, and this is maybe a Chicago Rhythm Project exclusive. But would you feel comfortable maybe divulging some stuff you had to take out that you would have liked to see put in?
Oh, I don't remember actually.
Okay.
And the funny thing that happens is that when I was in the research process of it, I always want more. I always wanted more, and I wanted to know more and find more and push it. But ever since it's been published, and every time I look at it, I always want less. Actually, because now I look at it as a reader, and I always find things. I never find things I wish I put in. I always find things that we didn't need that. Maybe we could have left that part out, and this might have gone faster. So I tend to be on that side of it. I don't know if there's so much that I left out, but we can talk about the present or things that post date this, or if that's what you wanted to talk about.
No, I was just curious because it ends with it's like there's I could say so much more about like the post Glover dancers, and I'm
well, that's also me saying like it's not over, and that's part of what that gesture is saying. Like the book is ending here, but whenever this comes out, 2015, there's going to be more, and you're going to read this in 2021, maybe, hopefully, and a lot has happened since then. A lot has happened. Actually, I think TAP's in a better place than it was when I finished the book in a lot of ways.
Well, can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think that the field actually, for a lot of the beginning of the 2000s, Sabian Glover's dominance was overshadowing. That was like, for example, at the Joyce Theater. It's a theater in Manhattan, one of the main dance theaters.
I've stood outside of it.
Okay.
So
there used to be a sort of an unwritten rule of like one dance show could be per season, and it was almost always Sabian.
I do know he's always a
Sabian had a show. Sabian had a show. That's good. Sabian's great. Good. He has a show. But there are other tap dancers, right? And I feel like in the last couple of years, that imbalance has shifted in a lot of ways. So Michelle Dorrance has come up, and Ayandeli has come up in a way that she wasn't. Dormisha they were always around. I mean, Ayandeli, Dormisha, they're the same generation as Sabian. Michelle's a little bit younger. But or then another, Caleb Teicher. There are other people coming up, and they're getting attention, and they're getting opportunities. And I think that's really good. That's really good for the field, to see a little bit more diversity, a little bit more all the different. It's not just one dancer who's holding up the whole form.
Sure, and I love the point you make. This I also thought was quite profound. That you speak of Glover having kind of like a dichotomous kind of approach. On one hand, the re-glorification of tap dance, right? To have tap dance taken seriously, and for everyone to kind of understand this beautiful art form.
Yes,
that's like his main goal. But on the other hand, he's can be often, as you report in the book.
Yeah,
I have no experience. Can be very exclusionary towards people.
Yes.
And you make that point. It's like, well, how are you going to get everyone in if you're pushing some people out?
Right.
And I've heard a lot of stories that corroborate this.
Yeah.
You don't happen to listen to Tap Dance podcast, do you?
Not too much.
Well, I would recommend the Tap Love Tour.
Oh, I've heard of that. I've listened to a couple of those. Okay. I think very good.
I think it's episode, I think I get it right, 61 and 62. Where he interviews a number of tap dancers, and they pretty much say the exact same thing that you're saying. Just going to the jam only for no one to talk to them, and because they just weren't in the group.
Sure.
And
there's a lot of stories that I don't put in here that I know as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just thought that point was interesting. I mean, how do you see that?
I mean, some of that is just personality, right?
Sure.
Which is. That's so what he has his personality. That's not so important. And then some of it is a real dilemma maybe about how open you want to be versus how focused on excellence. Because I think some of his exclusion or the conflict is like, I want everyone to love tap dancing, but I don't want it to be crap tap dancing. I want it to be what I think of. I mean, this is a guy who's devoted his whole life to tap dancing, and has pursued it at the highest level.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a spiritual practice for him, right? So mass popularity and highest level spiritual practice are in tension. So that's a legitimate part of that tension, that dichotomy, and then its personality issues. That's something else.
And then that kind of spawned off like this other brand of tap. Maybe this was I'm sure there was people that thought this way before.
Yeah.
But now there's that stream of tap dance where it's the pure stream tap dance, right? And speaking of, you don't want to do bad tap dance.
Yeah.
What is bad tap dance?
Well, then we get into issues of taste, of course, too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it kind of seems. I mean, there's so many interviews with Glover where he expressly states what he thinks is bad tap dance.
What the bad tap dancing is, what the good tap dancing. Who's in the church? Who's not? Who's in the club? Who's not? Yeah.
Right. Who comes to your studio? Oh, my studio's open too. Well, not anybody, but people will. And it's like, I get it loud and clear. But now, like you said, we have people like Caleb Teicher, right, who combines a lot of different forms in tap dance. Sometimes he tap dances so slow and so simply that, I don't know if I like it or not. Usually by the end I do.
Yeah.
I get he has a point by the end and like, oh, okay, I understand. And like Michelle Dorrance's work too. I mean, of course, it's rhythmically, technically impeccable, but also she has got her style. One thing I like about Dorrance dance, tell me if you noticed this too, she kind of has, I don't think she likes being compared to the modern dancers, because she's not a modern dancer.
She's not, no. She's a tap dancer.
But in the way that modern choreographers, and perhaps ballet choreographers, probably most choreographers, have a little bit of their aesthetic. I don't know if she's setting, I really don't know if she sets, like, you
can see her body on the other body.
Yeah. I don't know if she sets it or if people just are drawn to it, because it is. I've done some Dorrance choreography with CHRP, and it's fun. It's fun to dance like Michelle Dorrance. If you haven't tried it, you should try it. But is that a sign of? Is that the better atmosphere that you mean? That we're being more inclusive?
Yeah.
The different types of tap dance?
Yeah, and she's one of the big influences on it not being everyone looking like Sadie and Glover anymore.
Sure.
Because for a while it was very cookie cutter. There was a whole, like, you looked at the floor, you hit it hard, like you probably had a thing of water with you, and maybe you like were grabbing your leg, right? There was a look to it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not Sadie Glover, actually. That's all surface stuff.
It's the version of Sadie and Glover.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, people working within a paradigm.
Yeah.
They're gonna do it like that. I had a question. Where was I gonna go?
I had a good one about Michelle.
Oh yeah. Well,
and I think she's freed up a lot of people to say, I don't want to be like, I want to be like this, or I'm like this. This is how I someone like me. It's a geekier aesthetic, I think, too. Like a free to have those sides of themselves and still be kick-ass tap dancers.
Sure. So what would you say then to? I kind of see tap dance follows, like, when I'm not getting into politics or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I kind of see the trend when studying the history of politics that people get progressive here, and then time moves on, and now this isn't progressive anymore.
Right.
We got the people over here yelling at them, but then time moves on, and now they're no longer progressive, right?
Okay.
I lived the opinion back in like early 2000s, like that whole aesthetic was very progressive, and I was very.
Well, what do you mean by progressive? You started with politics.
Progressive in that.
You mean like
in that
cutting edge, or like?
Well, because I hadn't heard about the African influence in the history, right? I saw Gene Kelly and Dancing It's a Man's Game. Someone bought me the DVD like when I was a teenager.
Wow, that's weird.
And because I was tap dancing. So any tap dance, people just buy you stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I found this. Yeah. Did you know about this? Or the VHS, I think maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot those existed for a second.
Yes.
And for a long time, I was like, well, that's got to be it. Irish made tap dance.
Yeah.
So when I heard this other stuff, first it was like a shock, and then it was just like, why haven't people been talking about this? Yeah, man, now I'm angry.
Yeah.
Right? And you feel progressive. You feel like, again, like you're discovering this thing that's been there.
Yes.
Right? It's like you take the blue pill or the red. Which pill is it? Does anybody? I don't actually remember which pill.
Yes.
Say the blue pill. The blue's probably a nicer pill. But now I've found myself softening up and kind of being more accepting of other things. I'm less concerned with upholding a particular tradition, and I kind of enjoy seeing the other stuff, and for a long time I felt guilty for maybe enjoying things. And I'm arguing with people online.
Yeah.
Because what do you do?
Yeah.
You know. And,
well, what do you mean by the sort of purity you're talking about? You mean like you can't like Sabian Glover and also like Gene Kelly?
At the time, I was of the opinion. Just the people I was hanging out with at the time, and yes, I was under that opinion. But
that to me is not the right way to go.
Now I agree with
which
you.
is not at all, as we've been saying, and you talked about me being a critic, that there are no standards. Like there are a lot of lousy Gene Kellys out there, and there are a lot of terrible Sabian Glover imitators.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, I was one. I had long hair. I never quite got along enough to do anything with it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take it back. Let's take it back up.
Okay.
Gene Nelson, most underrated Hollywood tap dancer. What do you think?
No, I would say Donald O'Connor is the most underrated Hollywood tap dancer.
You do say that in the book. Shoot.
Yeah.
I could have been like, why do you think? And it seemed like I read the book.
You like Gene Nelson though?
I do like it. There used to be a bar downtown, and there's this old dude who goes there, when it was still here, named Brad. Yeah. And he has seen everything. Yeah. He lived in New York. He saw everything. And every time you talk to him, if someone would be like, "Oh, what do you do?" Sitting next to me, "Oh, I'm a tap dancer." Yeah. "Oh, tap dancer," like Fred Astaire. He would lose his mind and be like, "What? Gene Nelson is? Why did anyone talk about Gene Nelson?" And that's really how he talked. Yeah. And he would just go on for a half hour about poor Gene Nelson not getting the credit he was due. And when you see him dancing on this banister,
well, he had that whole acrobatic side.
Oh yeah. But why Donald O'Connor most underrated?
I just felt like he doesn't get the credit, partly because he's in Gene Kelly's shadow, and Singing in the Rain and other movies.
Sure.
If you look at the other Donald O'Connor movies, the ones where he was the star, maybe it was like just me learning about him, because part of what I did was I tried to see every tap dance number ever, right? Which was a lot of like finding a strange little DVD, or actually not DVD, it was VHS.
Right? They existed, I swear. Some of you people don't believe
YouTube
this.
did not exist.
YouTube did not exist.
You had to like go to the library or find it, or like trade with somebody. I was doing that all the time. Anyway, and watching some awful, terrible movies. I watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of crap movies to find the one little tap number in it.
Yep.
And
I'm in there.
Anyway, I was saying those John O'Connor numbers are really good. Actually. Yeah, really good.
And he had a TV show too, right?
Yeah, later.
Yeah. I've seen some clips from that. Never a whole episode.
Yeah.
I always feel so guilty not watching the whole movies, but sometimes I fall asleep and I miss the tap dance part, and then I gotta go back and look through it.
Well, that's why I take the clips out and put them on YouTube, because most of those movies you don't need to see the whole movie. You really don't.
Sometimes I like seeing that.
No, it's nice. It's fun. It's fun to see what the context was and what was around it. But like when the Nicholas brothers were in the movie and they were segregated, so they're not in any other part of the movie.
Yeah.
They're the best part of the movie. You don't really need to see the Sonia Henney story or whatever else is around it. I watched those, and you don't have to.
Okay,
just watch the Nicholas brothers clips.
Yes. I don't think people have an idea of how much they owe you then, because he watched the movie, so we don't have to.
That's right.
That's a T-shirt, man. Why isn't there What the Eye Hears T-shirt? I looked at this. You don't have to. It's staying on the movie train. I've been going through the Shirley Temple. Here's one reason. Okay, I'll give you a reason why I think it is important to watch the whole movie.
Yeah.
Because I went into a real dark place after watching the full Shirley Temple movies. Like, as particularly the really early, the kind of the first ones.
Yeah.
Where Bill Robinson is a part of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't realize. 35. The Littlest Rebel.
Yeah.
Begins at the dawn of the Civil War. Like the Civil War happens.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden, at a birthday party, and then there's a knock at the door. Excuse me, Civil War here.
Yes.
Everyone's got to clear out.
Yes.
And watching some of these movies. So we talk a lot about tap dance. The death of tap dance, or anytime you meet a person on the street, they're like, oh, it's a dying art form, don't you?
Do
Like,
you get that? Still get that?
I do still get that. Well, I don't even really bring it up to people anymore, to be honest, because I'm just so sick of hearing that. But yeah, we still get it, and everyone's got the theories. That's another thing I like to collect. I like to find what are the different theories on, what's happening to tap dance, right? And my personal theory is the Shirley Temple movies. And
About what?
Of just what started the decline of tap dance.
Uh-huh.
In particular, the scene in Littlest Rebel.
Those would have been the height of its popularity, right?
Exactly.
Those are the most popular movies. She was the most popular box office.
Saved 20th Century Fox.
Yeah.
And I don't accept the theory that it was rock and roll because, black dance, black art, black music, kind of the nature is to evolve, adapt, be new.
Right.
Especially then when people start appropriating it, that's when the crisis happens. That's when the next revolution happens. So I just don't.
Or when black people invent something else. It's not the way people are doing it. We don't need to do that anymore.
Exactly. So I don't think it's the next. I don't think it's like the 50s themselves that did it. So like, what could it be, right? And then I'm sure you're aware of the negative image of Bill Robinson in a lot of black press.
Yes.
Right. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. A lot of my pale friends have no idea. And that was another one of those things where I'm talking to someone, they're like, oh yeah, well, that's a lot of people feel this way. And that was like a smack in the face. So when I'm watching The Littlest Rebel and Shirley Temple's like, well, what's the problem out there?
Yes.
And Bill Robinson's like, I don't know. They stink about nothing, I think.
Yes.
Like, that blows my mind. This is 1935. This is 70 years after the end of the Civil War.
Which didn't actually end, right?
Right, and so to have Bill Robinson say, I'm not
Gone with the Wind is a couple of years later.
Well,
this is what that Southern lost cause ideology was strong in Hollywood. It's in those movies.
Oh yeah.
It's in those movies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And for Bill Robinson to be the most famous, popular African American tap dancer of the first half of the 20th century, it's a tainted. He had to make a lot of compromises to get.
Oh sure.
To get to that place, right?
And I've gone through that part where like I was like, how could he do it? But then you talk to people who have a better perspective on things, and you can't. Anyways, my critique is not of Bill Robinson. It's of these movies. So you have the guy who's the most famous tap dancer of all time, but then he does this.
Right.
And if we're counting on the next generation of black dancers and black artists to progress the art form, but now you see, the man who is tap dance in this new light.
Right. I don't think it's a new light, though. The only thing I would say about that is that's not what you're shocked by is ordinary in 1936.
Okay. Good. I tell me when I get it wrong.
Right. It's not going to be a shock. That's like that's what everybody did. That's it's worse, right? That's normal in the culture at that point. But it is true, and I think I read about this in the book. You can see reactions to Robinson changing in the 40s, and he starts to get hecklers.
Yes, you write about
in when he does black shows. They don't want that image anymore. It's parallel to how a lot of jazz musicians start to feel about Louis Armstrong, and his stage manner. They didn't like that anymore, and so why do you think that's how tap died?
Well, I'm just trying to.
It's among the many factors, right? It became less. It became something of an embarrassment among young black people in the 40s and 50s. So few people are doing it. Yeah, that's part of it. Also, not the whole story, right? Because
absolutely not.
Jimmy Slide's coming up then, right? There's
good point.
Buddy Briggs is coming up then, right? There are people who felt differently. Absolutely, then. Baby Lawrence is at his height then, right? So it's still happening. It's still happening. But that's that's a big cultural shift that's happening. That's also important.
Sure. Did you find anything else looking in any jazz studies where the tap dancers come up? Because I love when I find the stuff like
Totally.
like you talk about. I think it was Danny Richmond from Mingus's band.
Yeah, the drummer.
And they got to work with Baby Lawrence for
a while.
like a hot minute.
Yes.
And so you got a quote there, and I know like Joe Jones. There's stuff.
Have you listened to his whole album? He does an album where he does imitations of tap dancers.
Man, you're embarrassing me in front of the entire world because no, I haven't.
Yeah, you got to listen to that album. It's called The Drum. And it's a kind of spoken album, but he also the drums on it. And I haven't listened to it in a long time, so I can't remember. I think he does a Bill Robinson and Eddie Rector, maybe Baby Lawrence. I can't remember because of course they played together because he was Basie's drummer, and all of those guys toured with Basie.
Yeah, incredible. Have you found any other gems like that? I mean, I know I'm asking you to like go through the
database of 10,000 things.
Where would be a good where might be a good place for the amateur tap historian to look? Because yes, we got our library, Chicago Public Library is amazing, New York Library, but where are maybe some of the best places?
What is it you want to find?
Well, not just necessarily for me, but just I mean,
this amateur tap historian. What is it? What are you looking for?
Okay, well, I can think of a couple of things. First thing would be tap dance's influence on jazz music, right? Because you find these little things here and there,
right?
And then you're like, well, how much more could there be? Because everyone says like, like, well, a lot of these jazz musicians were influenced by tap dance, right. And then you're like, oh, like who? And then they got like one quote.
Some of them say so, and then a lot of it is like, I don't know, maybe they were in the same place. It seems likely that they would be influencing each other, but we're never.
I know. Good point. Good point.
Not in like a smoking gun kind of way,
oh, sure.
where someone comes up with the tape, where I don't know,
there you go.
Fletcher Henderson is inventing some kind of new swing thing, and really it's Eddie Rector, and he's, I got it from the tap dance. We're not going to find that.
There's a young Elvin Jones sitting down here, just it's like we got to you copying Baby Lawrence,
right?
Actually, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to like Baby Lawrence and all them.
Sure.
Do you agree with the deification of because we like to use the words like the tap gods, and this and this, and and well, so
we meaning
the royal we, a good amount of people. Well, I'll get specific. Popular vernacular, at least within Chicago tap dancing.
Okay,
I can say that 100%.
Okay.
I got works cited. He's right here. Is it good to deify these people? Because again,
I guess I don't know what you mean by deify necessarily.
Well, I mean
are they great?
To call people gods, I would say that's literal deification.
Yeah.
But then when I read a lot of the some of the critiques of the book, people are so upset. Like, how can you talk about these people this way? And it's like, well,
they're people.
Exactly. Yeah. Like maybe deification. I mean, I would just like to get your opinion, or if you have no opinion, that's fine.
I'm not even exactly sure what the context is. Like, just using the word God or making them into something that they're not human beings.
I suppose the latter.
Yeah.
I suppose the latter.
I guess that's an easy question. I'm not for that.
Right on.
But like having heroes, they're my heroes too.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I can watch Jimmy Slide and Chuck Green and those guys. Baby Lawrence, listen to that album over and over and over and over and over again.
Oh no. Have you you never interviewed Chuck Green? No.
It was too late. I mean, there was so many that I came when I started. I just like all these people, and then the worst were the people who had like just died. Or someone like Buster Brown, as I talked about at the beginning. I was around him for a couple of years, and that didn't really happen. The interview, I didn't get to talk to him the way I did, and then he died, and it was a shock. And then Gregory Hines was a big shock. I thought, well, I have tons of time. I'll put him later. Let's get all the old guys first, and then I'll get around to Gregory Hines. And then he died of cancer.
Yeah.
Suddenly. I never got to talk to him. I took some classes with him, and fortunately he was a famous guy, so like there's lots of footage and there's lots of stuff I could find out to learn about his life and be able to cover his extraordinarily important role in tap history. But I never got to ask him questions.
And that's why I have had a guilt complex forever, because I was like 3 separate occasions I was supposed to take class with Gregory Hines. I went to the Broadway Theater Project. I mean, I was not there to take class with Anne Rankin. I was not there to audition for Fosse. As great as those things are, I love Anne Rankin. Don't get me wrong. Rankin fans, don't come after me. But I was there to take that class with Gregory Hines.
Yeah.
And then like we get to South Florida for this like 2 weeks that I'm going to be at this place, and they announce Gregory Hines is not coming. And I'm heartbroken because now I'm stuck in South Florida with the palmetto bugs. Like, this big, you know, and no tap dance at all, really. And for a little while, I was cursing the name Gregory Hines until he unfortunately passed away. And then people were like, "Well, that's why he wasn't showing up." So, man, I'm not inexperienced at putting my tap shoe in my mouth, to be honest, figuratively speaking. Why didn't I find the juxtaposition between Hines and Glover in the book very interesting? Because you go from, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm perfectly had to be correct about this, the lineage, Davis Jr., Hines, Glover.
Somewhat, that's one way of thinking about it.
Sure. I try to put it together because there's the one section that's just lineage, and I'm just like, well, how can I pull out from there? And I could just be making it up, right? But where, you know, Davis Jr. gets a lot of criticism because while he's this amazing performer, world-class talent, you know, but still also kind of insular, right? When they critique, you know, how he dresses very flamboyantly. He's, you know, hugging Richard Nixon and stuff like that, and he doesn't really. I don't actually know. Does he ever really address these things? Does Sammy Davis Jr. ever really address these criticisms that you know of?
Of what kind?
Of just
his politics?
His politics.
He did all kinds of stuff. He wrote books, and there's great Playboy interviews. I mean, there's plenty of literature on Sammy Davis Jr.
Well, it seems, as I'm reading the book, and this is just my own conclusion, that it seems like Hines kind of learns from Sammy Davis Jr.
That's the way he talks about it.
Okay. Because he's so inclusive. I mean, he is 30 minutes over or 30 minutes left? Oh, okay, good. I thought, had they been putting up signs this whole time? What time is it? What day is it?
Get the hook.
Shoot, I'm ready for that, man. I could have used the hook earlier in my career, but people are too nice. But just to go from kind of Sammy Davis Jr. just doing his thing his way to Hines just being open to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, just being hyper inclusive.
Yeah.
At times. And then going to Glover, who is inclusive, but then also in ways insular. You know, I mean, I'm just trying to make sense of that lineage and what each one kind of learned. How did Glover kind of be exclusionary from Hines? That just seems like a step in a.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, of course, things evolve rhizomatically. I mean, doesn't have to be in one line.
Yeah.
It's just I'm trying to wrap my head around.
And ultimately, they're just different people.
Of course, very good.
And the times change, all that. But you can see, I'm not sure where this question is going either. But there was a lot of. You can see Glover grappling with that too, though. Like after Hines died, he felt like the mantle was on him, and he had to behave in a different way. And his shows started changing because of that. Not always in a way that actually worked for him. Like sometimes I think he feels like he has to put on a show and be entertaining, and that's usually Saving Glover at his worst or most shallow. That's not his. Whereas when he does his most insular stuff, that's what I love the best. When he's getting like as deep, like half the people are leaving this show because they don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm on another plane because he's taken this art form, like drilling so deep into it. That's the Saving Glover I like. Anyway, he's not Gregory Hines,
No.
and he's not Sammy Davis Jr. Like I don't want him to be. He's not that guy. But the culture kind of wanted him to be, I think, because it was like one guy, so he had to be the whole thing, and that's too much. That's too much for one person. Which was true of Sammy Davis Jr., true of Bill Robinson. Like, even to go back to your thing, like, so Bill Robinson made some movies that some people didn't like. That shouldn't kill the whole art form, right? Why is there just one guy? Why was there one Bill Robinson? Why was only one black tap dancer allowed to be the
king of tap
dance? Yeah. Right.
Do we have a king now?
I don't think so, and that's good.
It's good, right?
I think it's good.
No, one point that Glover had that I mean, again, I'm constantly changing, right? My opinion about these things as I get older.
Yeah.
And I feel like the older I get, kind of soften up on so many things, which is I'm happy about actually, which is really nice. I'm glad that I am. I look back at my younger self and be like, what a jerk. But one point that I do still kind of like is focusing on the commercialization of tap. But then on the other hand, what's wrong about making tap dance for an audience, right?
Yes.
You speak in the book about open style and closed style, right? The idea of making tap dance for tap dancers, and expecting an audience to kind of follow you along. Like, well, how can they? I mean, I remember before I listened to jazz, it was squeaks and squawks. And now I'm showing it to people. I'm showing it to my wife, and she like squeaks and squawks. I'm like, this is outer space, baby. Right? So, I mean, where's that line? Do you think between commercial, between just like abstract, just like popularist, whatever, to something that is made for the public but maintains its integrity?
Right. I think there should be a spectrum first of all.
Yes.
Like,
please.
There should be room for a lot of that. But there are people who do it. Like I feel like Ayodele Caselli these days makes shows that have a wide appeal.
Oh yes.
A wide appeal. Like everyone I know, if I bring them to that show and I have all kinds of different tastes, they all like it. Right? So she's hitting this wide range of people and tastes and backgrounds. But there's no loss of integrity. I mean, what she's doing is any purist would think of as in the tradition, straight up tap. Right? So that can be done. There's a line.
Sure. And then I feel like a lot of people forget that. You have, I hope I'm getting this right, you have Bubba Gaines jump rope tap dancing. Right?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, you got Miller Brothers and Lois. They're dancing on all sorts of platforms. Like, there was a lot of
entertainment
a lot of other stuff put in there.
Yeah.
And then we talk about these people, and as we call them tap gods.
Yeah.
But then I feel like a lot of people, if someone was tap dancing jump rope on the sidewalk, someone would be like, "That's not tap dancing." It's stand up.
They need to read the history then. Yeah.
Some of the people are knowledgeable in the history.
And it depends what you're doing, right? If it's someone just with tap shoes on jumping rope, that's not tap dancing. That's not Bubba Gaines, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yes, I hear you loud and clear. Perfect. Answer.
Like, can you close your eyes and is it music? That's one test of that. Is that tap dancing what that person's doing with the rope? And ideally, the answer is it's cooler music because it's got this rope sound in there too that the person's using expressively, and that is the the metronome against which the other rhythms are changing, and it could be that. It could also be a person who knows nothing about tap dancing with tap shoes on, trying to has a gimmick. I'm tap dancing with a jump rope, and then you're right to look down your nose at that thing and say that's not tap dancing.
I just want to repeat that one more time. If you close your eyes, is it music? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's going to stick with me for quite a while. That's a nice turn of phrase.
Yeah.
If I may change tracks once again.
Yeah.
I know we're bouncing all over the place.
That's fun.
Right? Because I've been bouncing around the book, going through like all my, and then I read it through twice, and I've been bouncing around. But now to go to present day.
Yes.
Would you care to share an opinion on the state of tap dance on Broadway?
Oh, well, there's nothing right now, so that's easy.
Oh, yeah. But again, referencing the one article. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, I've read this article so many times.
It hasn't been good for a long time, so that's we can say that. Like not since the 40s or something.
Except for the occasional
little thing, but
Right.
but that's also because there was a split in the culture where the people who became choreographers for Broadway just didn't know anything about tap dancing, or they knew a very small thing. There was like a kind of tap dancing that got frozen, and that became Broadway tap. And it, like frozen things, it was a little bit dead, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't growing anymore, and that became Broadway tap, and then that's what people drew on for a long time. Bringing the noise, bringing the funk. That was part of the great things of that show, was that a tap show on Broadway that wasn't that at all anymore, right? And that didn't have all that much progeny, right? There wasn't like a whole other. Now it's all better. It didn't happen so much that way. So you get little things now and then. I know Astaire is going to be choreographing the tap numbers in the new Funny Girl. So maybe that'll be cool. And Michelle Dorrance has a new show on Broadway, which she's choreographing. So maybe that'll be good.
Is this the turning point, perhaps?
It could be a little bit. I mean, Sabian did a Shuffle Along a couple years ago.
Oh, yes, of course.
So there might be. I mean, you know what? Actually, the most interesting thing there, now we're really getting geeky, is that when I got the announcement that Funny Girl, Astaire isn't the choreographer for the show. She's just the tap choreographer. And to me, that was interesting because it made somebody care. Like the choreographer had enough, or whoever made the decision, the choreographer or the producer or whatever, to say, we needed someone who knows this. Yeah. We're not gonna bullshit here, right? We need an actual. We need some tap in this show, and I can't do it. I'm gonna do the rest. I'm gonna do my best job with this other stuff, but I can't. We need someone else to do that part. Yeah. That's like a show of respect. That seems like a good sign, maybe.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
Going back to this 2018 article, because I mean, again, I've been meaning to ask you these questions for a while. I'm glad we have time to talk about it.
Not much.
I know it's not much. I know. 200 minutes. I got it. But you bring up an interesting point, and again, I may have misread.
Yeah.
The like 6 times I read. I mean, I really read this thing.
I'm glad you liked it.
I mean, the pages on my computer are turning yellow. But you draw the correlation to a couple things. When tap dance is used in the shows, and who is tap dancing in the shows. And to be specific, the shows you're speaking about in the article is the SpongeBob musical, Margaritaville, Book of Mormon, and Mean Girls, specifically those. With Casey Nicola and Catelli and I forget the other choreographer.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And it's always one number in the show.
Yeah.
Right? And it's always done by the kind of saddest character.
Yeah.
Right. Someone who's really dealing with someone. Right.
Yeah.
And in SpongeBob, Squidward is a modern dancer, and that's supposed to show you that he's not cool.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's not even good modern dance. But,
yes.
But and then, so on Broadway, how are they going to show he's not cool?
Yes.
Well, they get him to tap dance to a song called "I'm Not a Loser."
Yes.
So and that makes a lot of sense in Book of Mormon. It's the part where they're talking about like repressing their actual sexuality. So you tap your troubles away.
Yes.
Right, and it's just and Mean Girls is a similar vein. I don't remember exactly Margaritaville.
Right.
But that struck me as very interesting because when you look at it that way, that's pretty why do the crummiest characters, why are they the tap dancers?
Yeah, it's the same answer that I gave before. That like that's what happened. It got frozen in a certain way, so that it's not. It's a relic, right? And that's the way it's used in those shows, as a relic. It's by the loser character, right?
That just says something to me about the psychology of some of these choreographers. Like,
sure, and also just not personally, but the meaning of tap in that culture, which can only be changed by bringing in other stuff. Like I said, if I took any of those people to like go see the Idelli show, they'd probably think it was great. You know, and then like that's good. And that's probably what somebody did that. Probably somebody went to one of those shows, and now she's getting hired, and maybe it'll get better.
So have just few Broadway choreographers gone to a tap dance show?
Yeah, I think that yes. I mean, we went back when we were talking before about becoming insular, and that is a consequence of it becoming insular. If tap dancing is happening only in tap dance festivals, tap dancers tapping for other tap dancers, then the amazing richness of it is not spreading. And then people have an idea from a long time ago. And that's their only idea of what tap dancing is.
I'm glad you brought up tap dance festivals. We are at a tap dance festival.
We are.
And you write a little bit about tap dance festivals.
Yeah, well, it's an important part of how the art form changed in the 80s and 90s to 2000s.
Oh, yeah. I can speak personally. That was every year going to the Chicago Tap Dance Festival was just, Mecca.
Yes.
It's your pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yeah.
And really influenced so many people. Did you ever attend any of the festivals?
I did. Yeah. Well, I went to the New York Festival a lot in its early years.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Did you go to the New York Festival this year?
This year there wasn't one. It was just Zoomed.
Okay. Well, that's too bad. Well, I've long since expired my list of questions.
But you were going to ask a question about festivals, I thought. Or maybe we should stop.
No, we got. What is that? 100 minutes. This thing. So I have a lazy eye. Sometimes I see two things. I swear I'm looking at you. See, it moves. All right, you can see it.
You should put that in your act.
I do. When I do classes, every time I talk to a kid, and they're like, "What's going on to the left, Mr. Tristan?" Festivals are force for good. Are they still this driving force for tap dance, or has the festival scene kind of staled a little bit? Pandemic aside.
But pre-pandemic, it could be a little bit. I mean, that insularity becomes a problem. It's great that people get to learn, and the knowledge is spread, and there's a place for people to have some stage experience and learn, like see people on stage, your teachers, and then maybe next year you get to try it. That's all great. The only problem is when that's all there is.
Yeah. Again, tap dance for tap dance.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I remember reading some. I forget if it was in your book. Did you write about the some Chinese dance forms that really only at festivals? I might have read that someplace else.
Yeah.
I think I read that someplace else.
Irish dance sort of became that way a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. And at competitions and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I worry that tap dance goes that route.
A little bit, yeah.
It's only, you need state funding, and it's at these events, and then that's it.
It's a danger. There's a danger in that. Yeah.
I know. You didn't actually travel learning about the international tap dancer. So at the very end of the book, hey, we're talking about the book again. That's right. What the Eye Hears. That's the book. I almost forgot. At the end, I really appreciate just the international coverage.
Yeah.
Learning about the best tap dancer in Estonia.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yes.
I love it. Did you travel in these places?
A little bit. I went to Japan, and Germany a little bit, or Paris, a little bit. Not to every place. I didn't go to Brazil. I would have loved to. But that research was just like the other kind of research, doing interviews, reading books.
So how did you
trying to find things on the internet.
Yeah. How did you find the only tap dancer at the time in Astaire? Where did you find him?
That guy came to the New York City Tap Festival. So,
okay, right on.
I mean, the festivals are good in that way too, right? It's not just Chicago people learning about Chicago. They're international festivals. And, they're all over the world, and that's how the global form also circulates.
Sure. I was happy you squeaked Thomas Wedelton in there.
Yes.
Because he's one of my nicest guy, and I was just like, yeah, good for you. And actually, I'm also in the book. You see, there is a section that mentions me where you're talking about the festivals, and you're like, Chicago Rhythm Project brought some tap dancers to China.
Yes.
But that was me.
That was you.
I'm in the book. I made it.
There.
I'm in the book. I'm also in the Tap Dance podcast where they're like, who's Tristan Bruin? It's like, oh, he knows more about beer than any other tap dancer. And that's it. So
that's it.
One day someone will talk about my
good.
tap dancing. In the meantime, I'm immortal 2 times 2. Another reason I think it's a shame that maybe people don't finish the whole book, possibly because of length.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of people have questions. I was talking to someone the other day who's like, well, they didn't finish the book because they got put off. They read a section and they didn't care for it and they stopped reading. Right? Some critique did. And then asked me a question. It's like, well, there's not a lot on these tap dancers. I think it's like Dorothy Toy.
Yeah.
From San Francisco. There's not a lot about Dorothy Toy out there.
There was more about Dorothy Toy. I think she only gets a paragraph in here, but there was more in the earlier draft.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's more. And so I called the person back and I was like, well, page I knew the page. I had it memorized.
Well, actually, something like that, there is an index.
Oh yeah. But I'm just surprised because then people, maybe don't finish the book and then they don't actually get to realize the tremendous resource that it is. Unlike anything else, because
that's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
Because that's part of what it's there for. That's why I did it, so people can know.
So people can know. If you close your eyes, is it music? Brian Seibert, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have the hand of God coming in here to turn us off. Oh, they gave us a thumbs up. Good. That's good. All right. Well, thank you very much.
That was fun.
Yeah. So, I don't mean to go too much into these critiques of the book.